Mathin Va, Falcha, and thank you so much for joining us this morning. We're here at the Lovat Hotel in Fort Augustus once again for the second part in our Tune Into Tourism webinar series, Speak Scotland, where we're going to be talking about how you can add value to your visitor experience and also grow your business by using our native languages. We are going to be using these languages as an asset in the same way as we use our other natural resources here in Scotland. We've got so much to offer with our food, our drink, our mountains, our history, our music, and Gaelic and Scots and our other dialects are also a huge part of that, and they're another asset that we can be using. So we want to be tapping into that opportunity, and we've got some great guests here again today to talk to us and to help you to join the discussion about that. Rob McKinnon, you're from the Outer Hebrides Tourism. Tell us what it is you do up there in the Outer Hebrides.
Outer Hebrides Tourism is a member organisation that coordinates tourism on the islands all the way from Barra in the south up to Lewis in the north. We've got 400 members, and we make sure people have the best experience possible when they visit.
Now, you don't sound particularly elephant in the room, particularly like you're from the Outer Hebrides, but you
I have my name, although it's spelled incorrectly, as I'm commonly reminded. So yeah, we're part of the economic migrants, I guess. So we first, I guess, over 2 generations went to Glasgow first. So I'm actually Glaswegian.
Right.
I was born in Glasgow, and then obviously went down. But
families from the Hebrides.
Harris, yeah.
Harris. Okay, brava.
So.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. We'll be getting into all of that a little bit later. Eilidh Cormack, who's from Skye.
Hiya.
From a family of musicians and Gaelic speakers, very well known. And you are also Gaelic Ambassador of the Year at the moment.
I am, yes. Yeah,
you're very passionate about bringing Gaelic to a new audience.
Absolutely, yes, yes, I am.
So fantastic. And of course, we've got Caroline Gregory. We are here in your hotel, Caroline, and thank you very much for having us. And you agreed, foolishly perhaps, in the last webinar 3 weeks ago.
To take it on.
To take it on, to take on the challenge and to start introducing some of the language, in this case Gaelic, into your operations. Overall, broadly positive, we can say?
I would say so. Yeah, the actual introduction of it has been positive.
It's been a good thing.
Yeah.
Great. Well, we can't wait to find out how you've got on. Now, we also want you to get involved. It is so important that we hear what you're doing, what your experiences are, what your ideas are, what your thoughts are. And we're going to be back in about 6 weeks' time for another session, and we've still got space on the panel, and it could be for you. So get in touch with us. We've got Richard manning the chat box as ever, and he's going to be there so you can talk to him. Richard.
Thank you, Julia. Yes, please do get in touch. Cameron's already said hello, which is great. If you are watching now, let us know where you're watching. Let us know how you've got on with anything over the last couple of weeks. And if you're nearby any of your friends, drop them a text and tell them to tune in.
Thank you very much, Richard. Well, before we find out from Caroline how she got on, yesterday I actually I had a little trip to the Clansman Hotel, just by Loch Ness, beautiful spot, to speak to Mr. Loch Ness himself, Willie Cameron, and we had a big chat about using Gaelic in tourism. We've got a few clips to play you throughout this webinar, and here's his first point.
Because we're in the Highlands of Scotland, tourism is still a seasonal business, the seasonality. We would love people to come back in November. The mountains are still here, the Loch Ness doesn't move, it's spectacular, a lot of great Gaelic words for the winter conditions, Corina Schnechter, or things like that. So it's to implant some, and I know people that have come here, have cottoned on to the Gaelic language years ago, and have come back year in, year out. People that have gone on to go to study at Sabhal Mòr Ostaig. I've got a Mancunian lives in our village, has learnt Gaelic, and is a great advocate, great ambassador for it. I'm not saying every tourist should do that, but it gives them, it's another part of the story, and at the end of the day, the bottom line is, it's the story. It's all about the narrative. But the other thing too is, of course, is that we've got this tremendous diaspora out there that are now engaging more with Scotland, people that have generations going back. I don't think there's a day goes past that I don't have somebody in one of our hotels, here, there, and everything, wants to say, George has got Scottish connections, you know. His mother came from Lewis, or his mother came from Peterhead, or something. People want to claim to be Scottish. This is something I'm finding. I'm nearly 70 years of age, but I'm finding more and more and more people want to have. I was at a luncheon recently, and people wanted to make sure that I knew that they had a Scottish connection. So it's only one step from the Scottish connection to the Gaelic connection, to that connection of the Gaelic speaking, that their mother was a Gaelic, their father was a Gaelic speaker, they came from Tongue, or they came from Ness, or they came from wherever. It's just that one step, and that's all about using the media and the medium of the media to get that through to the diaspora you've got. And I think you've got 40 million Scots that live abroad, and I'm sure many of them are from Gaelic-speaking backgrounds. So it's to connect with them. So there's a great opportunity.
So some really great points there about how we can perhaps use Gaelic to help us extend the seasons by, drawing on that asset there, Rob, and also about making connections. The Scottish connection, it's so important, isn't it?
I think so. Like, lots of our visitors come year after year, and they want to get to know the island. They want to build a connection with people, and if the language helps deepen that connection and make it a stronger connection, then all the better. I think they want to understand those things and want to get to know the people that they meet. And I think in the Outer Islands, we're lucky that still half the people speak Gaelic. Somewhere between half and 2/3 on every island speak Gaelic, so they can experience it real. It's not something that's historical. It's actually connecting with everyday life.
Living, breathing thing. Fantastic. Well, Caroline, Willie talking there about using Gaelic, and that's what you've been trying to do to start to use it.
Yeah.
Can you tell us what you thought you might try and get some phrases into your communications? What have you decided to do? We had a little video diary from you, so we heard some of those. But tell us what you've been up to.
Yeah, well, it was quite good what Rob was saying actually about
Introducing Gaelic so that people are using it on an everyday kind of basis. So we have a map which we give to our customers, which is just about the local area, walks, dog walks, things to see and do. So what we're actually doing now is reproducing this, which is going to have Gaelic phrases on it. Not lots, but even if it's just kind of 5 or 6 that people can kind of recognise and maybe just use if they fancied it and just see how they get on. And then what we found that we need to do, some feedback that we've had, is rather than just having how it's written, is also the pronunciation and phonetically. Yeah. So that's what we've been doing.
What are the phrases? I'm not going to make you do them in Gaelic.
Kind of, hello, how are you, thank you, please, typical kind of British politeness. And then there's one in there which is going to be, does it ever stop raining? Just for something a little bit of fun. But we were trying to figure, what's been quite tricky is getting the right phrases in the right context, and then also getting something that maybe isn't really extendedly written, because it needs to be able to fit within a certain space. So that's kind of like what we need is help on that.
Right, okay, so where have you gone to then to get, what resources have you used then to find what these phrases are and what words?
So Richard, I probably need you to help on this one.
Yes.
You did go to some of the websites that we've suggested.
Yes,
I think
the ones
Learn Gaelic.
Yes, Learn Gaelic, and then there was the other one which was like a Gaelic dictionary.
Which might have been
Fachlabake, which is great because it also does some audio on there as well, which you need, because otherwise you've got no Scooby how to say it.
The problem is, of course, to both Rob and Eilidh, you'll know this, is depending on where you live, you probably pronounce Gaelic in very different ways. A Leosach would say it very different to someone from Glasgow or from Harris. So how does someone like Caroline figure out what the right way to say it is, or should we not get too hung up on that?
Yeah, I suppose it depends. I think we're always scared of being wrong in Gaelic because it's a minority language, and I think people feel like they really need to protect it. And I suppose when you're printing something, you want it to be as right as possible. I suppose it depends on whether you want to really localise it. So if you wanted to try something from kind of the Fort Augustus Loch Ness area, you'd have to maybe go to DASC or dask.ac.uk.
Who's that? What's that?
So that's a digital archive of Scottish Gaelic. So I work for them on the audio archive, but they also have a Fachland von Plug, which is a collection of kind of word lists that people have gone out and found in fieldwork, spoken to people. So there's lots from kind of very localised areas. Different villages have different words for things, even in Harris, or so. it depends how local you want to go or how general you want to be. But yeah, there's lots of resources out there. It's just knowing about them,
Which one to use for your business.
Yeah.
And I think what you were saying about putting a bit of humour in there, you have to make it feel right for your business, to have the right tone, don't you? And that's a difficult thing to do when you're doing it in a language that's not native for you.
No, exactly. And I must admit, I didn't actually, I understood there's going to be dialects, but I didn't really appreciate that there'd be so many, and even the fact that can be so localised, which adds a little bit of complication. But I think if you've got a vision of what you want to do, it makes it easier, because then you can actually kind of try and piece it all together.
So some challenges there as well, and trying to get your head around the pronunciation. It's not necessarily something that comes really easily.
No.
Even just saying Martin Va can be not sound a bit foreign in your own mouth sometimes.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
What else have you done? So you've got the map. You're going to get
got the map.
printed
So correspondence that we've sent out to people. So we've got it on the emails. Like, see you soon. Have a safe journey. I really should be able to kind of say this, but I think that the trickiness that we've had is we haven't got a complete full translation. There was the one which was safe journey, which I was pronouncing completely wrong, which you corrected me with.
I think it was like Turas Savalche.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, that written down, there's a lot of B's and H's and T's and E's and S's. It isn't necessarily obvious.
Yeah.
But you don't need to be able to speak it, do you, to be able to use it, Rob? I mean, the fact that as long as you've got it spelt correctly, in your communications, then you don't necessarily need to be able to say these things, would you say?
Yeah, I think writing it, we just put some new information points out, and we've just put it in both languages, so people can see the English next to it. So therefore they can self-translate. The people running the points don't have to speak Gaelic. They know that, I'll try and pick one, but feels the clock is information, because the two words are next to each other. So I'll probably just finish out of that.
No, it's fine.
But so you can see those things. So there are tricks around those things. I think the colloquialism, the more colloquialism you can bring into it. In that one, we actually had an issue. We have a board outside that says "come in." And actually that varies. Well, Higastach in Lewis, but then as you go down it becomes Higastach. So we actually had to get the poor guy doing the boards to change them as we went down the islands. And but it's a way of engaging people. Even that actually is engaging people. And if we get it wrong, if there's one thing. And sometimes in some of the islands there's a couple of things. We were in Eriskay, and one of the people, I was like, how do you spell Eriskay? And there's all sorts of spellings of Eriskay, even in the island. I had one person, and we were walking around the island looking at the wall, and there are lots of things. So it's not. There's no real answer. And it can actually be part of the. You can make it part of the story, part of the narrative.
Well, that's a really lovely way for us to look at it, because I think you want to do it right, and you don't want to offend anybody. You know what I mean? So actually, if there's a bit of a relaxed nature to it, then that kind of it helps us to be able to introduce it a little bit more naturally. So
and be more
thanks for that. Yeah, that's great.
Well, the other thing we were discussing, Caroline, is the fact that actually having somebody to talk to be your Gaelic expert on the other end of a phone or in an email saying, we're thinking about using these phrases before we go to print, can you just check?
Yes.
And I think, Richard, we were putting the call out there if anybody wanted to help us out, to maybe volunteer to be a Gaelic expert for us.
That's right. Yes, if you would like to give us a hand and help us out, then get in touch. And, maybe just to be somebody who's at the end of the phone, if somebody wants to phone up and sort of check a pronunciation or check a spelling, get in touch. We have got an email address that I will be putting in the chat box, but the email address is going to be speakscotland@hient.co.uk. So speakscotland@hient.co.uk. And I'll stick a copy of that into the chat box momentarily. But I did have a quick question for Eilidh, if that was all right. It's like, just generally, like, how are the Gaelic community with people getting it wrong, making spelling mistakes, Is there a sort of, a kind of a sort of stiffening and a bristling if people make mistakes, or are people just so pleased that everyone's giving it a go?
I think increasingly attitudes are changing. I think there probably are still people who are, very, they really want it to be right, or they like to tell you when it's wrong. But I think increasingly people are just happy that people are trying, and we need that. We need learners. We need, even if they're not learning, we need people with an interest in the language, and we need to even just pique interest in the language. You know, it's not that they have to learn it to fluency, it's just, you know, displaying it, or, you know, so...
I think for the most part, yeah, the primary response is, oh, it's good that, you know, you're trying.
Yeah. And
you know,
they're
you're making
helpful,
effort.
they're trying to be helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's
Absolutely, yeah, and it's okay not to be perfect. You know, we'll get there. You know, especially when you're just starting off, it's not going to be. You know, nothing's ever going to be perfect straight off. It is, I suppose, it's just like I can be a wee bit of a grammar pedant, and it does just make your brain itch slightly when you see something that's like we spelled incorrectly. So you can sort of understand it, but I think we're trying to work together. That's the thing, isn't it? Rather than get too.
I think sometimes the visitors don't know the history of the language as well. Like for some of the people alive still, like Gaelic has a very different reputation and profile than it did today. Some people, in my generation, I wasn't taught Gaelic because people didn't think it was worth teaching me. So I learnt it as an adult. So therefore there's lots of, it's not just the pure language thing and how you're speaking it, but it's the attitudes that the actual speaker has about that language, which is coming into it. And that varies by age quite significantly.
Yeah, well, I mean, my son's at the Gaelic school in Glasgow, and it's absolutely, they cannot get enough staff. They're just growing at such a rate. You know, there's such an appetite for that. And these are a new generation of Gaelic speakers who, you know, are not even from the Highlands, you know, who are going to have different attitudes as well. So, you know, it's very much a living language, isn't it, Eilidh?
Absolutely. Like you're saying, the popularity of Gaelic medium education, you know, we've got at least 90,000 reporting some kind of ability in Gaelic, and that's just in Scotland. I've got friends in Singapore who've learned Gaelic, friends in Canada, and they're now here working in Gaelic, and you know, they don't even have a connection. They
The language is attracting people here, and that's, you know, in lots of different ways and different sectors, but tourism is a big one of that. Caroline, did you find for yourself, obviously not having the language, you know, from as a child, quite difficult, absolutely getting your head around it? What about getting your staff to buy into that? How are you going to manage that?
Well, the people that have bought into it so far are interested in it. They think it's a great idea. I think it's just how it's going to be incorporated. What does that mean for them? What do they need to say? How do they interact? But I think if it's just subtly done on the communication, that's a starting point. And then if we do say hello or good morning or, you know, whatever to people, then hopefully that'll be a natural progression. Because I think it does need to feel natural rather than forced or, okay, changing everything because this is what we need to do.
There's an enthusiasm there.
Definitely, yeah, definitely. And it's been really good doing like the little video clips and things like that. I think it's just kind of generated a bit of a buzz, a bit of an interest. So nobody said anything like, oh, you know, what are you doing that for? I think they understand the importance of it, but it's just how it fits into their everyday working life, really, how that's going to work.
Fantastic. Well, Richard, we'll come to you in a wee second. I think we've got another wee clip from Mr. Loch Ness, from Willie Cameron. And I think here we're going to hear how he's sort of making the business case for introducing Gaelic.
The people abroad and our own people too, because if you haven't got our own people educated as far as the language is concerned, or what about the language, or parts of the language that could be used for their business. And at the end of the day, every business has got to pay wages to somebody at the end of the week, to themselves or to their staff. They've got an accountant on their back that's looking for the bottom line all the time, and they've got Her Majesty's Revenue wanting the tax of it. So everybody out there is looking for another string to their bow as far as business is concerned. Here is a string to the bow, the Gaelic language. Use it to your best, whether it be just in your bar, on your menu, having the dictionary behind the counter, using a few words, having a translation on your menu with a few words. You don't have to do the whole language, but there's some great words. Great words. Just go on to Wikipedia. You can get, I think there's a one page that says something like the 20 best words in Gaelic to use, or the 20 best words to use for the weather, or 20 best words to use for a good day or how you're feeling. Signage is important. Signage very much so, because then people will ask what the sign means, where it is. We're doing it in some hotels now for Mandarin. Why can't we do it for Gaelic? Plenty of hotels put their signs into Mandarin because they're getting this large number of people coming from China. certainly using the menu, because people are eating at least 3 times a day. So it's in your face on a menu. As I said before, the whiskies, the story, the narrative relative to that. And again, to have some, even if you're not a Gaelic speaker or no connection with Gaelic, if you have something like a Gaelic dictionary or a book that explains things, oh, I'll just get that for you. You know, what does that mean? What does that mean? Oh, hold on a minute, I can get it for you. If you can give the information over fairly quickly to the person concerned that makes the inquiry, so much the better. They want to ask more, they want to engage more.
So yeah, really important to have that extra string to your bow. It is about the bottom line. We are all trying to run businesses here, and Gaelic can be a real asset for you. Richard, what's happening in the chat room?
Yeah, thanks, Julia. I just wanted to address a point from Susan Webster. Susan, thanks very much for getting in touch. Susan's just commenting about this being Speak Scotland and Scots being part of that too, and it would be good to have somebody representing the Scots tongue. Yeah, very much appreciate that comment, Susan. Last week we did the first part of this webinar, and we had Davey from the Shetland Amenity Trust, who was a storyteller, who was talking very much about that element of Speak Scotland. And we will be back in a few weeks' time with more sort of conversation around this area. And as we've been saying, we are inviting everybody who's watching if they'd like to take part or if they'd like to get involved in some way. So I've just put that email address into the chat box. So take a note of that, and then do get in touch with us, and maybe we could get you involved in future webinars. Julia.
Yeah, absolutely, Scots. It isn't just about Gaelic. Obviously, we're talking a bit about that today, particularly Caroline, where you are. It would be Gaelic that would be the indigenous language here, but it is very much about Scots as well, or whether that's a dialect, a Scots dialect, such as Doric or Shetland, as Davy was here to represent last week. But very much the principles are all the same, aren't they, Rob? You know, it's not so much about the language specifically. It's about creating those connections. So what do you see as being the business case? Willie, we were there talking about having another string to your bow. What do you see as the business case in the Outer Hebrides of using the language in tourism?
I think, you know, the word that's on the street in tourism at the moment is about authenticity.
Absolutely.
And
yeah.
it's an overused word, but we are a destination that has authenticity by the bucket load. And that's really the situation. So, you know, the tourist industry in some ways has gone from where you wanted to go somewhere the same as where you were the rest of the year to somewhere where people really want somewhere different. And this is a difference. And it gives us a different story to tell, one that helps us stand out more. So it makes it easier to build profile, just makes it stand out more, makes it more memorable in people's experiences. It makes the story richer. And particularly, it is Gaelic in our case, but whichever the dialect is, they're all rich storytelling languages and cultures. They are verbal language, they're verbal heritage that they have. So the storytelling in them is great. So, you know, the more you can dig into them and understand some of those stories. I think the language is a vehicle to doing some stuff. But if all you're doing is replicating a classroom environment, that's going to come across. What you actually want is some of the enjoyment and the richness of the history to come through through those things, and then pass that passion on to the people.
So tell us what you're doing then in the Outer Hebrides, what your current plan is.
So we are we're in the process. We've split the offer down into 6 stories. So we use the stories. Each of those is in both languages now. So we have a Gaelic and English title for each of those. And those are 6 reasons for people to come. And we've got Gaelic as one of those stories. So therefore, at the moment, we're just working on a campaign to help tell the island story with some Gaelic words, a bit like what Caroline's doing on the world, just picking some interesting words that will please people. So one of them is land. The story of the land itself is very interesting. Land is a 3-letter word, cheered. It's not hard to do. There's no H's in land. So we don't have the H problem.
D's, H's, E's, CH's, and yeah.
We don't have the H. And so we can pick out, say, 5 or 6 words of the culture. People pick up a word and they learn a bit of the thing, and we'll talk about the heroes and things like that. So it tells those things. But the word itself the language doesn't become a barrier. It becomes a routine, and we're hoping to run that. Yeah, it's invitation into the thing rather than a barrier to something, which I know all those H's can act as that kind of way, and I still I'm still dealing with that myself on occasions.
You're learning Gaelic? You have been for the last 5 years?
Yeah, about 5 years, yeah. So I'm a Sabhal Gaelic. So trying to deal with it, but trying to get some authenticity into my accent.
But you don't have to go and study it. That's the point.
No, you don't. Yeah, you don't. No, I don't think we're teaching people about the language, and we're not teaching people
the
language.
language.
And there are lots of stories. So the little, if you put something on the bed at night, then it could just be a Gaelic phrase. There are some great ones like I don't know, your grandfather. Biolog the henna is your grandfather would know all about. Like first world problems is like, your grandfather will all know about central heating breaking down, and and there's lots of. It's just a really rich way of telling things. So I always think that the desire to translate is too strong. One of my businesses. We've got a tongue twister, which is a Gaelic tongue twister, which is quite nice for people to. But it's not actually that. So if it's like, can you actually go through? But they're all quite short words, so 6 short words. So it's like, can you get and people quite like the challenge of the tongue twister around those things.
Fun, yeah.
Yeah, so it makes it a bit of fun. So
different ways of engaging with the language. So,
yes.
As you say, whether you're presenting it to them subtly, allowing them to then ask the questions and say, what does this mean? Explain more, or actually being a wee bit more prescriptive in terms of here's what this means.
And using the businesses, I think we do have businesses around in the Hebrides, and using the network of businesses. There are businesses that really do have expertise. You had Sweeney on last time, who is like a real advocate and champion for the thing, and he's there. And there are other businesses, Cobbs in US, that brings people to learn about the language. So there are people who are really, their business is the Gaelic language, and they want to share that and support people. So if there's a need for support, I think there will be support, even if it's not in your immediate area. The community is supportive and wants people to try things.
And how do you manage that then in the Outer Hebrides? How do you sort of bring together people so that they are working together? How do you make them make those connections? Can you?
The conference in March, I think.
What was the conference?
So it was out, and we bring everybody together for an annual conference on the destination. So it's the beginning of the season. Everybody, lots of anticipation about the season around those things. And then that was where we were bringing people up and giving people, exactly as we're doing here, examples of people who are using Gaelic, hearing Gaelic spoken, and those examples. So there was we picked each of the 6 stories and gave a good example of those things, and told the story of the islands and where Gaelic sat in that.
Mm-hmm. Tell us some of the stories then, the 6 stories that you're talking about here.
So the 6 stories we have are of the islands, and Gaelic sort of plays into all of them. So the first is history with mystery. So we talk about the islands. Nobody really knows things. There's lots of stories in Gaelic, but nobody really knows the answers. There's always an animal or a beast or a giant or something that happened, and we don't quite know Finn McCool or but
varies as well
pardon?
Varies from
varies from bit to bit,
told,
and there's different bits, and that's one of the things about don't worry too much. Food and drink is really strong, so there's lots of food and sort of Gaelic sort of playing into the food element around that. Wildlife, and the names for the wildlife and translating the wildlife. So I don't think it's all just in a pure language perspective. And obviously the landscape, and that's one that plays nationally, is the place names, and understanding the history of the place names is really strong about that. And then our last one, apart from Gaelic itself, is well-being. I think that's quite a nice play, that there is a sort of view of life in this thing that is quite a nice way of, it's more as a community perspective on life quite often. It's quite a social perspective. The word Ceili it sort of means something in English, but it means something slightly different in Gaelic. And so, it's the sort of coming together around those things, close to the land. Generations play quite an important part in it. There's lots of things about the language that sort of give you a bit more of a well-being feel.
And that's quite a buzzword right now.
Which is a real buzzword. So we sort of play it into all our other stories, which are there.
Just picking up on stories as well, if you're struggling to find stories, pertaining to your local area, or if you can't find a storyteller, or again, the Dask website has an audio archive full of kind of Scottish stories, and they're told both in English and in Gaelic. They are originally Gaelic, I think, but they're translated in English because the field worker didn't speak Gaelic. But kind of how places got their name and the story behind that, and again, you know, talking about kind of local legends and things like that as well. So there are resources out there, even if you don't know somebody who has all these stories.
But there will be also local storytellers that you
course.
can use, and if it's not Gaelic, if it is Scots, or if it, you know, if it's a dialect like Doric, there will be local storytellers that you can bring in or refer to and work together, because it is about, you know, working together. You're not on your own here.
Yeah, I think so, like one of the things, we had Torquil Crichton speak, who's a journalist down in London, but very passionate about Gaelic, and really told the stories of the islands in a very passionate about emigration and the diaspora, and, you know, in fact Gaelic still exists in Canada, in Cape Breton, there's communities there, and the role that Gaelic played, like, really made people very proud of that language. But one of the things he did was he's done, and we're looking at working with him on it, is the A to U. So rather than the A to Z of something, because Gaelic only has the 19 letters, you make it the A to U. And it just intrigues people straight away. It's like, why have you said that? And you explain to them those things. There's a lot.
It's already
around.
easier.
No, there is.
There's so much out there, but it's finding it and
It's knowing where to look.
exactly.
Yeah.
But this is great, really great stuff.
There's some interesting. There's the poem. There's a poem about the alphabet. Angus Peter Campbell did
Yes.
which is each of the letters.
Yeah.
And actually, the way he talks about Gaelic and English is it's almost like there's a slight difference in his brain. He thinks about certain things as English and certain things as Gaelic. It's a very intriguing way of doing it. So letters, you know, you don't have to get really into the genitive and the spelling and the structure and lenition and all those things. It's the spirit of the language, I think.
Simple.
The more you can keep it into the spirit of the language.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. That's the idea of using language as part of the wellness trend is really smart, because it's not. I think the instinct would be history, or, you know, or maybe
The other thing, obviously music is is a huge
culture generally.
huge place. So there are, you know, the more you can dig into it, I think there are more angles on it than just the pure words.
The obvious
Absolutely.
ones.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, we've got a final clip from Willie Cameron just now, and he is talking here about how you could maybe make even more of the language in your business, rather than just using the odd key word, how you could maybe actually build that up into something even bigger. Here's Willie again.
But if you had it all together in a package where you were having the meal with a Gaelic menu, chef explaining what it was, how it's made up. You had the drams, somebody give you a little whiskey tasting in Gaelic, telling you all about it and using the words, giving you half a dozen words to learn, really, really nice words that really have a good meaning that you could use yourself in your day-to-day living. You don't have to use it with Gaelic speakers. You could use it with anybody else speaking Italian or whatever. Just say, well, in Scotland, in the Gaelic language, they use this word for whatever. And put on storytelling, of course, the narrative relative to some of the great Gaelic tales, Ossian, the tales of Ossian, things like this is fantastic to, and you would get a market that was very interested in it, and not necessarily from the diaspora, from other countries as well, Germans, French. I had an Austrian that used to come here years ago. Sadly, he's passed away, and he reckoned his name was Ra, R-A-T-H, Willie Ra, and he felt that he was of the Jacobites. His people came of the Jacobites that ended up in Austria after Culloden, and were probably Macrae. So I remember my late mother made him an honorary member of the Clan Macrae Society, and you never saw a man so pleased in all his life. And he always said sláinte when he drank, and he got totally immersed in the whole, and he came every year, totally immersed in the whole Gaelic culture, because he felt he had some thread. But you don't need to have the thread. People get immersed in, and a lot of people who are English speakers and have no connection at all with the Gaelic language that want to get immersed in it, because it is something that is different, something that is attractive, something that is romantic. And package that up as the Gaelic experience, sell that to a tour company, sell it to individual people. So there again, that's enhancing, going back to enhancing their bottom line. It's creating business, it's giving another interest, and people are looking for something different.
So I think that's a really great idea, especially as these days, another thing that Willie said when we were chatting was that tourists really want to have bite-sized experiences, and increasingly, you know, they really want to be immersed but not for too long, and then move on. They want to be able to get a real sense of place as they move around the country on their trip. And Rob, one of the other things we discussed was cruise tourism. They really want these packages, these experience packages, and using the language could be a real way of boosting your business by doing that.
Yeah, I think so. And interestingly, I don't know if you had the same thing, but sometimes the further people come on the visit, the more engaged they are and the more interested they are. We found non-Anglophone visitors are quite often more intrigued in Gaelic because they're already speaking a foreign language, so they want to learn about another one.
That does seem to be true. We've heard a few people saying that, yeah.
Particularly Germanic.
They're already bilingual. They're interested.
They're interested. And particularly Germanic, it sits easier with the Germans, and some of the stuff that English speakers find difficult, the Germans find more logical around those things. So,
Sorry, excuse me.
Throw the verb to the end every now and then.
Yeah.
I think they're into those things. I think it is a great way of, particularly for cruise passengers, they have a limited amount of time. It is a way of building distinctiveness and giving them something special. They are in a different place, and you want something that really makes a difference with them and is unique to you, to your location. So therefore using the language to build that around so it is different from the other 10 places that they've been to in this particular visit.
And it is increasingly that global market. We are having people coming from further and further afield, and there's a real opportunity there. And you spoke about Germany there. Eilidh, another thing that Willie said was that Runrig, incredibly popular in Germany, and they play Runrig in the hotels, and the German visitors absolutely love it. Their tours sell out like that in Germany. Music is also a great way of connecting, and it doesn't need to be old music. It doesn't need to be pipes and fiddles, although there's nothing wrong with that. And it doesn't even need to be Runrig. You sing, and you've sung in the Hydro down in Glasgow. It is a modern, it can still be a modern thing.
Of course, yes, absolutely. And there's lots of people doing really interesting things with native, minority languages in music as well. Think about Nightworks. Obviously, Runrig still is considered kind of new and innovative in relative terms. There's lots of people doing really fantastic things, and Gaelic is being increasingly well represented in media and things like that as well.
You were in fact involved in bringing a little bit into a computer game.
I was involved in the Bard's Tale 4, and that's a PC and an Xbox game set in Scotland. And so this is obviously the fourth one, but this is the first one where they've really wanted to, again, make it authentic. So they wanted to use Scottish music by Scottish musicians, and so there's Scots, there's Gaelic represented in there, and a couple of songs that were composed for that especially as well. So
maybe that's something you could introduce for your young visitors.
Absolutely.
A Scottish game.
Absolutely.
For them to play. I know how much they enjoy it. My son is absolutely hooked on these kind of games just now. Sounds good.
Yeah.
And we should give a shout out. So Hebcelt is coming up next month.
Yes.
So Hebcelt is in Stornoway in July, and actually offer Gaelic tasters, which is very popular actually with the festival goers. Just a chance, always sells out the Gaelic taster sessions in the thing. Yeah. So
fantastic.
But they're very very yes, that's right. It's a good gathering point.
Well, and all the other sort of cultural things, like for example, you were in involved with the Outlaw King.
Yes.
So
the Netflix film. Yes, that was very exciting. They were filming up in Skye on Coral Beach, so
that's a big draw for tourists as well, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Sort of film locations,
Outlander. We've got to mention it. So yeah, it's been really interesting, and they're really looking to get Gaelic into that, and to make it real, to make that. I know it's so hard to keep.
You can say it.
I know, but even Chris Pine was interested in learning a bit of Gaelic.
He's a hunky actor.
Yeah.
If you're not aware. I googled him.
Really?
Yes, I googled him quite a lot. So you were teaching him a little bit of Gaelic too, weren't you? Because he wanted to be able to sing along. So there's a real interest there.
Absolutely. Yeah, he wanted to sing along with Hecan Batha, which is an old Gaelic song that we were singing in the scene. So for Robert the Bruce, but for himself as well, he was really into it. So yes, it was great. But and I think that again piques people's interest, and gets them wondering. Because people I teach children in Falkirk, and they don't even know Gaelic exists.
So how do you, because I think we heard from Sweeney, from Donald McSween in Loch. He did a little video for us. It's on our social media. If you check out the Facebook page, there's also a clip there from Caroline on her little video diary. You can watch those, they're still up there. But he was saying, you know, he had a little group of nursery kids, and he said the way that he used Gaelic with them was very similar to the way he did with tourists. So tell us about how you kind of prove to the kids that Gaelic really is something that's part of their you know, landscape.
I suppose on the first day I usually start with place names in their area, because you know it's just an obvious way to say, look. Gaelic was here. Even if there's not so much of it now, Gaelic was here. And then again using media, especially music, because kids and music, you know, that's the way they learn. You know, that's the best way to learn. So making up lots of rubbish wee Gaelic songs to teach them, but also showing them Nightworks and showing them Manran, and you know,
like look, it's still this is
cool,
a real thing.
Look, and they love the music. They love, you know, dancing around to it and learning the songs as well. So music is a really good way in for that, and then
also making the connections across the generations, like the sort of things that they might have heard their granny saying.
Absolutely.
Which is another thing that you can kind of explain to tourists. You know, like what the examples?
Breeks. Trying to think.
Smashing. That's one.
Yeah, smashing, galore. You know, all these words.
Smashing.
Smashing.
Good.
That's good. Yeah, smashing. So it's just, you know.
Slogan.
Yeah.
Galore is enough.
Slogan. Yeah, slogan. A battle cry. So slogan comes from slogan. So
words we already know and we already use. Go, that's
absolutely.
Really
Or English words that have
and on the £5 note.
Roots. Yes.
Sorley McLean on the £5 note.
True.
Which is always the people are carrying Gaelic around in their pocket.
Yeah.
All the time. I walked out on the ocean with my conscience.
Yes.
Yeah, it's the beginning of one of his most favourite. It's a beautiful poem. And actually, you could introduce the poem based on that, but it's just the first two lines. It's
just making them realise that Gaelic is in their everyday life and in the language that they're using anyway. They just don't know it yet.
And in Scots as well, that will be very much the case as well. A lot
Again,
of the words that we use. So fantastic. Well, there you go, Caroline. There's some more ideas for you. The £5 note, something a lot of people have in their pocket, although I never have any money in my pockets.
You don't carry money.
No, I don't carry money. Like the Queen. Do we have, I think, Eilidh, you gave us some of those Gaelic websites that we maybe could show them again, just to have a wee recap. So we've got Learn Gaelic. Which is a great one, which I believe that Caroline used as well. You can get translations on there, have a wee listen to the audio.
So they've got Fichit Fachgal 20 words, and they've got different categories. So they've got an Outlander category, they've got a Roach Couple Down, they've got a place names, they've got Highland food as well. So if you're looking to do a little bit on your menus or something like that, that's a great place to go. They've got weddings if you run a wedding venue, camping, the beach. So there's really good things that you can use for tourism.
And lots of different kinds of tourism businesses.
Exactly, and they've all got, every single word has a sound file. So
great. So you can hear how it's supposed to sound, and don't get too hung up. Don't worry. Do your best. That's the thing.
Absolutely.
It doesn't have to be perfect.
But if you're needing help with that, then it's there.
Great. So, well, hopefully you can see those, check them out. Richard, did you have those in the chat box as well?
Yes, I've shared those in the chat box, and
we've shared those on the slide there as well.
Yep, they're there on the slide, they're there in the chat box, and also our email address is there in the chat box as well. So if you are watching this on YouTube, it's, what's the email address again? You can go to the live stream to see the email address in the chat box. Well, let me just find the email address for you.
Well, whilst you're doing that,
Speak Scotland at highent.co.uk. Speak Scotland at highent.co.uk.
That's a brand new email address.
Brand new.
So we're just getting your heads around.
I know, but people have been sharing some interesting resources as well. Some other interesting resources that I don't know exactly what there are, but there's one. Is it this? You might know about this one, Eilidh. Tobar and Dual.
Yeah, I was going to say.
And
Kistoriches. Yeah, Kistoriches.
How did I do? Did I do okay?
Yeah, not too bad. Don't worry about it. So
well done for trying.
Yeah, exactly. So there's lots of Gaelic and lots of Scots stories on there too.
Okay.
There's music as well,
cool.
an audio archive again, but a really good weight between Gaelic and Scots.
Oh, that's
as well.
good. And then Anna Walker said that there's a Scottish Gaelic explained on the Visit Scotland YouTube page.
Brand new, I think just over the last couple of weeks.
There you go, a couple of weeks, so there you go.
Well, go and check that out as well. So I guess we've run out of time. Goodness me, so much to think about, so much to talk about, and we're not done yet. We will be coming back in about 6 weeks' time. And if you want to join us, get in touch. Use that email address, speakscotland@hient.co.uk.
Yeah. Speak Scotland at HIENT. No, HIENT. Highlands and Islands Enterprises. So you're just saying that, aren't you? Highent.co.uk. Sorry, Audrey. .co.uk, there you go. Use that email address, get in touch.
Get in touch with us. Or you can also message us, obviously, on all the social channels. And keep an eye out there. We're going to be sharing more video clips, hopefully some more little video diaries from Caroline. And if you wanted to help us out, maybe help Caroline out with some pronunciations if she's struggling, then do get in touch and let us know. Any final thoughts from you, Caroline? How are you feeling? Are you pumped?
I'm feeling pretty positive about this, actually. It's given me, there's been additional avenues that we can explore, which I think is great. It's not dead, I think, and I think that it's been really lovely to kind of hear how... Thank you very much.
You've said it now on camera, Eilidh. You might learn from that. Rob, any final thoughts from you?
Just keep it positive and encouraging, and it's out there. Yeah. Somebody spoke Gaelic to me in the shop down the road this morning.
It's alive.
Down the road here this morning?
Yeah, she just said tapalat, giving me my change back, and I was quite surprised actually. I wasn't expecting it, but there's somebody there who's just doing their thing, and
think of the staycationers as well.
I don't think that was she. I don't think she made a judgment. I think she said that to all the visitors coming in.
Fantastic. Well, there you go. Little steps like that really make a difference, make you stop and think, and maybe ask some more questions, engage more.
Yes.
Well, that's great. Thank you so much. Thanks, Rob McKinnon, to Eilidh Cormack, Gaelic Ambassador of the Year, Caroline Gregory, good luck, and also to Willie Cameron as well for his contribution. Thanks to all of you for watching. Please do keep trying to introduce a bit more of the language, whether that is Gaelic or Scots or dialects such as Doric or Shetland, whatever is local to you, whatever is right for you, the principles all still apply. Stay in touch with us. Let us know what you're doing. Use that email address. I'm not going to say it again because I'll probably get it wrong. Use the hashtag Speak Scotland as well on social. Share your video diaries. Let's just keep this conversation going. We do still have space on the panel for the next one, so it could be you. So get in touch with us. And in the meantime, keep an eye on our social channels and keep an eye on your inbox as well. And you can watch this again on the YouTube channel. The full thing will be up tomorrow, as well as some highlights. And that is youtube.com/HIE Communications. I know that one off by heart. But for now, I have been Julia Sutherland. Mòr Ostaig, agus Cheery and Drasta.